Hi, everybody. The three of us are here to share some exciting news about new banners on the front of the church to go along with our identity as a new congregation. I'm Nancy King-Smith. I'm chair of the Racial Justice Leadership Team and a member of the board and UU Ministry for Earth. And with me are Pat Dillard and Del Salza, who are both members of the Racial Justice Leadership Team and the Building and Grounds Committee. We've wanted to have ways to reflect our values to the larger community, including our principles of the inherent worth and dignity of every person, the interconnected web of life, and justice for all. So we're looking at having some new banners that reflect the Earth flag, signaling our commitment to a sustainable planet, Gay Pride flag for our commitment to being a welcoming congregation, and Black Lives Matter with justice for all. The Racial Justice Leadership Team had talked about having a Black Lives Matter flag for a while, and in fact the Historical Society had one. But we wanted to be sure our congregation was really ready not only to espouse it as an ideal and seeking justice for everyone, but living it in terms of becoming a racially just congregation. Through our white fragility conversation right after we became a congregation, and then through the 40 people involved with Beloved Conversations this winter and spring, we're ready. And I'd like to ask Del to tell a little more about the process of getting to this point of having new banners.
Okay, so I have right here, these are the banners that we are planning to put up. This is Black Lives Matter, this is the Earth flag, this is the Gay Pride flag, and this is a picture of how they would look on the front of the church. We put the Earth flag in the center because if we don't have an Earth to live on, none of the rest of it really matters. And we considered several options in the design and decided to keep it simple and easily recognizable so that people won't look at it and say, what is that? They'll know what the meaning is and what we stand for. The banners will be hung as they're shown here. The Earth flag is a square rather than a rectangle, and these two are rectangular, the way the 150th anniversary flags were put up. Let's see. Yeah, so this was approved by the Building and Grounds Committee and the board, and we're hoping to have them up by July 1st. Take it away, Pat.
Okay, this is so exciting. Our goal is in hanging the banners is to show who we are, both to ourselves and to the larger community, to show that we are advocates for justice. And we're hanging the banners not as an end to what we're doing, but as a beginning of future work that we plan to do, future actions for justice in our community. And we hang them because we are people of faith, and we are committed as a community to work toward true justice for all.
And we invite all of you to join us in a conversation, both in coffee hour after this service, but especially next Sunday, where after church we will have a focused conversation about the meaning of these banners for UU congregation.
This chalice is lit to remind us about the dash between our birth and our death, to keep us mindful of how we use time, how we save it, how we kill it, that we rob and get robbed of time, we lose time, and we have all the time in the world. But no one of us is powerful enough to stop the march of time or slow it down. However, it is not beyond our control. While we cannot influence the flow of time, we can still honor it by getting the most out of it.
What is it you wanted me to reconcile myself to? I was born here almost 60 years ago. I'm not going to live another 60 years. You always told me it takes time. It has taken my father's time, my mother's time, my uncle's time, my brother's and my sister's time, my nieces and my nephew's time. How much time do you want for your progress?
Those words of James Baldwin have been ringing in my ears these past weeks as absolutely unprecedented events have taken place throughout the country in support of communities of color and in solidarity with Black Lives Matters and their movement against police violence. Baldwin spoke those words toward the end of his life, and they echoed a real central criticism that civil rights activists had been bringing since the turn of the century. This idea that moderate white people would always insist that the time would come for racial equality, but that the country just wasn't ready for it right now. There's a deep lesson to learn here from Baldwin, something that touches on something so fundamental in our lives that we probably never even think about it. But in a year full of pandemic and protest, it's something that we should absolutely stop and think about. And that's how we think about and experience time. If we hear him carefully, Baldwin's insight can help us realize our values by insisting on a just world right now. But it can also clue us into a more human and a more profound way of experiencing the world. As I say that, I want to invite all of you into this special time. This time that is unique among the whole week that we live, where absolutely all of you are invited to pause and simply be with one another. Joining in a community of seekers and question askers and inquirers and fumbling wanderers. We are still a distance, of course, but we are nonetheless together. A community that insists everyone have a chance to share in a time of open and seeking worship. So, pardon me as I interrupt what would normally simply be our listening to Joys and Sorrows. But one of the trickiest things we've had to navigate as we have become sort of strangers in this new digital land of ours these past few months is how to deal with personal information. Personal information that we used to share pretty openly when we met in person. But there's really no part of our worship that is more personal than our sharing of joys and sorrows. And the reality is that digital spaces aren't the same as public spaces. And there are reasons to be concerned about or to have anxiety about those things being shared online. So, in trying to navigate this, the worship committee would like to invite everyone who wishes to share joys and concerns, but to also invite people to keep their joys and sorrows private if they wish. We're going to have a special group of people who will be responding to those personal and private joys and concerns with individual cards and phone calls, and we will acknowledge them in our services, those that go unspoken. Of course, you're also welcome to share joys and concerns that you don't mind being shared online. We're in an exceptional period of human history. Doubtlessly, this will be a time that's written about and talked about for decades to come. The world is shifting in these profound ways, and struggles are occupying many of us on fronts in our lives that are scary and uncertain. But in all of that, we need to remind ourselves that this community exists so that we can serve not only the whole, but also each of us individually. And as individuals, we all have our own personal losses and victories, joys and sorrows, anxieties and hopes. And we want to remind all of you that we are always open to hear from all of you if you have to ask for some comfort or some help or a hearing. So please share them with us at announcements@uucleveland.org. Those remarks of James Baldwin, they really cut to the chase in terms of thinking about time. And as listeners, I think we all get that pretty immediately. The question we don't hear is the voice of the moderate before James Baldwin starts to speak. And he's the one who is saying that, progress will come. It will just take some time, maybe a decade or two. Baldwin cuts right through that. He's not measuring time in days and months and years and decades. Baldwin is measuring time in lives. He's saying that these are lives that have gone before him, that are his people following after him, who've spent vainly against the always delayed progress that the moderate promises will come. This distinction about time is actually really important. The Greeks were actually really helpful by having two words for time in order to make exactly this distinction. They had one word, which we'll be familiar with, is Chronos. That's where we get the word chronology and chronometer, things like that. And it referred to the time that takes place, on our watches and clocks. Time that was sequential and measurable. Chronos is the time that happens, when you're in a waiting room at the doctor's office. It's the time that fills up your work calendar. Chronos is the time that comes to you in teacher emails about your kids when they lay out what the school calendar looks like. That's Chronos. Chronos is the thing that makes you late, makes your vacations end. It's the thing that charges you extra because you weren't on time. That's Chronos for you. The other word was Kairos. And Kairos is something else entirely. For the Greeks, Kairos was like time from the gods' perspective. Kairos is the time that is like a synonym for ripeness or fullness, or time that stretches out into seasons, or even the time that makes up a lifetime, just as Baldwin described. Kairos is what you experience when you know just that perfect moment when you're supposed to add the minced garlic to the onions that are softening in your olive oil when you're making a tomato sauce. Kairos is what's at play when you have that moment in the summer when you have these squash plants all around you and they all have these golden flowers, and then as if all at once someone flipped a switch and suddenly you have 50 zucchini that you have to pick immediately. Kairos is it's that time you feel on a July night when you're 10 years old and it feels like summer will just absolutely go on forever. So if Chronos is like this, Kairos is more like this. But here's the secret that I think every shift boss and every watchmaker and every calendar seller doesn't want you to know. But it's also a truth that I think every religious tradition and most of the best philosophers would want to tell you. And that's that Chronos is a lie. Because the reality is that the human body and the human mind, these are magical things. And it doesn't experience time in one constant, measurable way. Think about the difference you experience time between a minute you spend. I brought up the idea of a waiting room before. Imagine the minute you spend in a waiting room at the dentist's office where you were just waiting to get some painful dental procedure over with. Now think about the 8 full minutes you get when you hit the snooze button on your alarm clock. Which one feels longer? This is a revolutionary idea, I know, but I'm going to go even further and say this. A huge part of our world is actually premised on the idea of taming and restricting and tying up Kairos in order to turn it into Chronos. In fact, I think there's a full-blown conspiracy to make us all less magical and less free by making us only experience time in a way that can be measured and quantified so that we're caged in by time. But perhaps, just perhaps, Chronos isn't as powerful as we think it is. And looking back at the last few months, there's actually never been a better time, see what I did there, to push against it.
The hour is striking so close above me, so clear and sharp, that all my senses ring with it. I feel it now. There's a power in me to grasp and give shape to my world. I know that nothing has ever been real without my beholding it. All becoming has needed me. My looking ripens things, and they come toward me to meet and be met.
Hi friends, Amy here, spirit play teacher for kindergarten through 3rd grade, and I'm here today to talk about time. And luckily there's this mysterious clock right here. Coolest thing about this clock, it's only right twice a day. Also, it's magical. And suddenly, in the attic of my parents' house, I'm transported to back in time. Bum, bum, bum. It's 6-year-old Amy.
Hi.
6-year-old Amy, hello. This is so cool.
Whoa, Big Amy, it's good to see you. You're so big. You're like a grown-up. Weird.
Can you tell us what year it is?
I'm 6 years old. It's 1994.
So, how's it hanging?
I don't know. I just like hanging out. It's summertime. There's no school. I have to meet with the tutor, though, and work on math. Oh, Mom said I had to. Oh, I am the youngest of 5. So I have four siblings. And I am a bonus baby. That's what Mom says. Mom says I'm a bonus baby, and so does Dad. But my sister was being mean one time, and she said that being a bonus baby means that I'm a mistake.
Man, sisters, they can be not very nice sometimes. Am I right? Or am I right?
Baby. But this is the craziest thing about being a bonus baby is that my oldest sister is grown up. And my grown up older sister, she just had a baby.
Wow, Amy, that is wild. You're an aunt and you're only 6 years old?
My sister Candy is my oldest sister who had the baby Gabriel. And so Candy used to take me out and she would drive me around because she's a grown up and she can drive. And we would go to the park. When Candy came home from college, which is like grown-up school, she lived here with us. And when she lived with us, I would sometimes sneak upstairs into her room and go through her things. But now she puts makeup on me sometimes. It's very fun. And I really love my big sister Candy. And little baby Gabriel.
Well, Amy, that is so great. Thank you so much for reminding me of how great it is to be 6 years old.
Yeah, thanks for visiting. I play with my toys, so.
Time travel in the attic is very exciting. And 6-year-old me, what a cutie, am I right? But the reason I wanted you to see 6-year-old me is because 6-year-old me loves her big sister Candy, and so does 31-year-old me. And the biggest thing about time is that for me right now, so my sister Candace, who I talked about, unfortunately at the beginning of COVID, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And she is 50 years old, and it's pretty young to be diagnosed with. And it's really scary. And right away at the beginning of COVID, I was unemployed. And I was able to take care of her. And I've been staying with her and taking care of her full time during treatment for the last 2 months, 2.5 months, however long COVID is, because it's strange how time doesn't seem the same or exist in the same way anymore. And the thing I've learned the most about taking care of my sister is that the most valuable thing I can give her right now is time. Pancreatic cancer is not a cancer you want to get. And her case is hopeful right now, which is great, but we really don't know which way it's going to go. And people have asked me, they're like, Amy, like, are you doing okay? Like, what, are you the only how are you doing this? How are you the only person taking care of Candace? And I say to them that what is so important right now about taking care of Candace is that when it comes to pancreatic cancer, time is all we really have. So if Candy survives, I'm not going to regret spending this time with her and taking care of her. And if she doesn't survive, I'm not going to regret this time taking care of her and spending time with her. Because that's all I have with her right now. And it's all I really have to give her. And so I think time is so valuable. And we don't always think about that and giving people our time. But right now, that's all we have. And I don't know how much time my sister has left. And that's okay, because at least I get to spend it with her. So thank you so much for going on that time travel journey with me. And I hope you all are well, and I hope that you find the value in time and the value in giving it to the people you love and for the things that you want to do that matter. Thanks. Bye.
Each week, we come together as a people. Together, we share stories, love, aspiration. We also share our bounty in ways that express our religious UU values. May this important ritual of sharing abundance remind us that making our world better is a task best shared.
For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven.
A time to be born and a time to die.
A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted.
A time to kill and a time to heal.
A time to break down and a time to build up.
A time to weep and a time to laugh.
A time to mourn and a time to dance.
A time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together.
A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing.
A time to seek and a time to lose.
A time to keep and a time to throw away.
A time to tear and a time to sow.
A time to keep silence and a time to speak.
A time to love and a time to hate.
A time for war and a time for peace.
So here's a story. I remember when I was probably about 10 years old. I was playing a board game with my brother and my mother late one evening. I think it was Monopoly. We were playing, it was getting close to bedtime. My mom had been very specific. She said, you're going to have to go to bed at 10 o'clock. And I was like, okay, we can still get this Monopoly game in on time. But of course, Monopoly can take forever. And this was one of those games that was going pretty long. So we found ourselves getting to that tick of the clock. It was suddenly 9:45, it was 9:50, 9:51. And I'm getting really anxious because I'm actually doing pretty well. I just got my hotels up on Park Place. I was making some moves. Things were going well. And I was just about to get ready to have that argument you have with your parents when you're that age of just please, I know 10 o'clock is a lie. I know that's not a magical number. If we go to sleep at 10:15, it's not going to be the end of the world. And then it turns out my mom and the universe were playing a trick on me. And when it got to 10 o'clock, she said, oh, well, actually, tonight's daylight savings. So it's not 10 o'clock. It's actually 9 o'clock. Now, talk about a thing that's going to ruin a kid's sense of time, is to learn at that age, when you're just getting a sense of the world, that, oh, time is actually a little bit arbitrary. Looking back and switching gears, I have to say we are so lucky to have Karin Tooley as part of our music staff here. I asked her this week if she could improv that piece you just heard, the famous song by the Byrds, Turn, 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 which is also our global scripture reading for today. And what she whipped up for me in just that one small request and in just sort of a moment of my kind of, just please, can you do this? It's actually a masterclass on time. Everyone knows that tune. It's a really catchy tune. It's a tune you can really live in, especially if you hear it the way the Byrds played it originally and you know that kind of sequence of things. But if you live in that tune, as Karin was just playing it, you are morphed and stretched and you're made small and then expanded, because that's what she's doing with master strokes on the keyboard. I don't know about many of you, but the period since the pandemic began, and social distancing and stay-in-place orders all started, I've been having a much less joyous experience of time's shiftability. I mean, since mid-March, I've had days that felt like they were going on absolutely forever. And then I've had weeks where I could swear Tuesday turned right into Friday. I've seen the internet memes that talk about our need for clocks that are just going to remind us what day of the week it is, because we've lost our sense of time. I should say we've lost our sense of Chronos. And then, as if the universe was just setting up something that we would never expect to happen quite that way otherwise, like a punchline to a great joke landing at exactly the right time, a confluence of events came together to shake loose an explosion of protest and social action that's roared across our entire country and even the whole world. But consider how that chorus came together just in time. A pandemic had kept people in their homes, glued to the news, people who were pent up, who had their energy kind of preserved and was keeping them in place. Over weeks, they were staying indoors. Then we have the tragic, horrific death of George Floyd, which was captured and broadcast at exactly a time when a large portion of the country had more free time than usual because many were either working from home or they'd been furloughed from their jobs. And just like that, it was time. Indeed, we are in that time right now. What does that mean for us as we think about the way in which we experience a world with that kind of timing? Probably a lot, but it means at least a few things I can think of. For one, going right back to James Baldwin, who is anchoring me this week in a huge way, it means that he was right all along. Of course he was. Of course he was. Justice cannot be scheduled. And moderate voices that have left marginalized people in the waiting room of America for decades have shown themselves to be the liars that they are. Because justice only has one time, and it's Kairos time. And that means now. If your justice takes place on any other time frame, it's simply not justice. I think that's what Baldwin was trying to get us to understand. But related to that, it means that we also cannot go back to our worlds without realizing that regimented time does not serve our humanity at all. I understand I'm making an impossible choice if I was, suggesting the idea that we should rebel against Chronos. And I mean, I get it. Like, we live lives, and we have jobs and children and schedules, and we have deadlines and soccer practice and bills and April 15th and all kinds of other things. I get it. That is all true. But we have all also been pushed out of the chains of that kind of time. And what we have learned is that the world still spins, even if we don't count out absolutely every second. So it also means this. To the extent that you can, you ought to measure your life in terms of Kairos. And leave Chronos for Tuesday afternoon schedules, and if you absolutely must, for beating your personal best on the treadmill or at the gym. That's a good place for Chronos. But Kairos, that is the key to what makes us happy and makes us human. I know these are going to sound cheesy and trite, but I swear these are the most powerful weapons in fighting against Chronos, is to do things that seem maybe lazy or even selfish, but are actually the most important things that we do. It means losing track of time on a summer walk so that you don't come back inside until the fireflies die out. It means, I think about this for myself, when you're listening to a stand-up comedian who is so funny and who so allows yourself to lose yourself in laughter that you actually get anxious that they're going to stop at some point in time and you're going to fall out of it. It means letting yourself, very much in the spirit of Baldwin and these past weeks, it means letting yourself be roused to action. When you hear that speech, or you see that image, or you experience that art that tells you about what the world needs in order to be radically different. It's a thing that tells us that we can't fall into that instinct to delay or to strategize. It's the one that allows justice to set the tempo and to let justice take the lead. It means occupying a holy moment with a friend where, because of a conversation or a piece of music, an experience, something shared, you actually are in that rare moment where you realize the fullness of who you are and of who they are in a way that normally goes right past you. Looking at the world we're in now, in 2020, there are gigantic things facing us as a society And very much at the same time, those things are also facing each of us as individuals. In the process, we've been shaken out of the mundane experience of time and put into a place where we can think differently about how we spend our lives. And for the sake of our better selves and of a better world, we need to take seriously this chance to resist the time of separation and sequence and embrace life's dynamic rhythm.
There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my soul.
I'm going to be a little repetitive in here, but I really can't think of better words to close today's worship with than those of my good friend and the Stoic philosopher Seneca, who famously wrote, "The whole future lies in uncertainty, so live immediately." So, whatever you're going to do today and in this coming week, if it's to embrace your family, if it's to make justice, if it's to meet this particular season of our vulnerable earth, I hope you do it with a new sense of nowness, because there truly isn't a moment to lose.